we're talking about how if if you got dropped in the woods with a hammer and some nails, how long do you think it would take before you could build a cell phone network? Do any of you even understand even a little bit how these fucking things work? And then when you understand how these things work, or at least understand that you don't understand how these things work, like Dan's was saying, how do they fuck with the feed? Do they put like a governor switch on it? And like, yeah, that's exactly what they do. And she's saying, it's amazing how they can fuck with the waves, with the air waves. It's not even like a cord connected or and it's true. It's how did we come up with this?
You can't.
How did we get this tech?
You blow a dandelion seed in the wind. You can't control which way the wind takes it. Depends on where it's at and the wind pockets. And like, how do you do it with electronic data or whatever you want to call it? It's just strange.
It's all really strange. And here, me, super, super arrogant piece of shit that I am, I flat out tell you, I have no fucking idea how any of this shit works. None. I understand that there are things that I don't understand. That doesn't mean everything that I don't understand, it is definite one way or another. What's all this then? Same shit it always is, Karen. Trying to expose the fact that this is all a J control scheme. And I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I think about the fact, I do this all the time. I have this sort of battle all the time where I go, my life would be better, my family's lives would be better if I would just stop doing this. And then I go, okay, but nobody else is saying these things, at least that I know of, and they're raping children, and they're dropping bombs on women. I don't understand how I can, I went to a thing with my wife a week ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever. And a lot of the time I just sort of sat there, making sure I don't say anything. Because if somebody pulls the right string, I'm going to fucking, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to, it even got to the point where, my wife knows better. And so it's her group of witches. Hey guys, witches, is that what we call it? Mm-hmm. Her group of witches, they get together and they do, they feed each other. It's a bunch of fat girls, and they all feed, each other really well. And then they do whatever ritual they have going on with the, because they're real into the whole narrative, huh?
The wheel of the year and the season.
Right, the narrative, that whole narrative, and so they do things regarding, the comparison would be like holidays, but they're not holidays, but
they call them sabbats.
Whatever. They do these things, and they do. And my wife was like, all right, it's 8:00, so you want to get going? We're about to start our stuff. You could stay if you want to, but you want to get going, right? Because she knew I would not, I even on my best behavior, I'm going to insult somebody, and I didn't want to insult anybody. I was having a good time, and I like those people, and, it's an interesting thing. I mean, it really is. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of dysfunction. And
however, I've been to a lot of different churches, a lot of different denominations of churches. I've been to different like Bible study groups. I've been to, I've even been to, they called themselves a church for lack of a better term, that was strictly like a study group where they didn't follow a particular Bible. They got as many different versions of the Bible as they could get their hands on, and they would all like study the words and the comparisons to come to like a general consensus of what it's supposed to all mean. And they would all speak like there wasn't a preacher per se, there was a leader of the group just to organize things. Anybody could come up and say, hey, I found this in this version, and what do you guys think? And like it was a really cool open group. I've been to all those, and not any of them really worked on what matters. Like us addressing our dysfunction, us breaking the generational curses, us doing the inner soul work so that we as people can come to a higher level of enlightenment, for if you will, a better version of ourselves. And that's what a lot of the different pagan beliefs are based on. Working with nature and improving, getting better health wise, mentally, your soul. I've never experienced those types of lessons or philosophies in any church or
of course
synagogue
not.
or anything I've ever been to.
Of course not.
So,
But you've clearly, by like, see, what you don't understand is by making that statement, you're saying how you have been desperately searching in every nook and cranny you could find for some sort of outer source to affect, to make the changes and to initiate the changes. And I know for a fact, like, you can say what you want, but I know some of the people in that group, some of them very well, very, very well. And those same people have been in the group for a very long time, and they're impossible to approach. Doesn't matter what day, time of day, tone of voice, body language, anything. It, even after years of supposedly working on things, they have not progressed, from my perspective, even a little bit in that regard. And I know a lot of it is because there's a lack of honesty. The truth is always hidden behind layers of control. And people, people only let, like, the group, everyone in that group only lets the group know the person they want the group to know. There's somebody else on the inside who thinks about certain things, certain ways, whatever, but doesn't want to say anything because they don't want to get ostracized, or they don't want to offend, or they don't want to, And we've been put into this super PC situation that, when you step back and you look at it, has really only truly benefited the Jays. Because women are still absolutely discriminated against. People of color are still absolutely discriminated against. There's literally only one group that hang on a second. There's literally only one group that has benefited from things in a way that is all encompassing, and that they don't, there is no, like, they can just do whatever they want and they don't get in any trouble, and that's them. That's them. That's how they do things.
Shit, 5 years later, there's still.
I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. That's why I'm not being as coherent as I want to be.
Consensus among the Chinese community that they feel funny telling people they're Chinese because of dickhead's China virus whole spiel. Because they still feel funny about it because fucking idiot, racist Trumpanzees still think that that's who did it.
I mean,
it's sick.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a strange, when we look at who ended up walking away from the PC movement, basically untouchable. It's them. Hang on a second.
Yeah, Trump made it illegal for college kids to protest on their own campus against only one group of people, regardless if that group of people is
horrible,
who was committing the atrocities that need to be stopped.
And that just happened to happen a couple of years before the atrocities went to level 25.
Now, if it were,
opposite
South Africa committing these atrocities.
Well, these things are happening. These things are happening all over South Africa. There's all sorts of genocide and really horrible things happening, but we don't hear about it.
But the college kids can protest against that without a problem.
Yeah.
They will not get in trouble. They're allowed to.
Well, the Israelis that are protesting don't get in any trouble. The Israelis that are pro-Israel don't, pro-genocide don't get in any trouble. And that's what I'm saying. I'm back to being focused. The only people that have benefited from the PC movement totally, where we all just agree that they're not even supposed to be talked about.
Nope.
It's them. And people want to say, oh, it's the New World Order, it's the Jesuits, it's the this, that, and the other. I can talk about any one of those things all day long, and I'm not going to get in any trouble for that bullshit.
And those are just the tentacles.
No, Karen. Yeah.
All of those.
Those are the breadcrumbs.
They're the tentacles that are all ultimately attached to the issue.
Well, but in cases like the New World Order and shit like that, I mean, they make movies about that stuff. And that's not some secret hidden thing that we're not supposed to pay. They make movies about it. But see, again, this is where I just and talk about easing people into it. You really need to watch Hollywoodism. That says the same things that I say, and you go, oh, you can't say those things. That's generalizing. You can't. No, that's anti-Semitism. Don't say that. Those are anti-Semitic tropes. All those things that you'll say, you can't say that to Hollywoodism because they made it. It's them. That's a great way to ease yourself into it. But I do think you either have to watch it multiple times or at least watch it with someone like me who is going to pause it and kind of, because it's a lot to take in. How about the old man? Did I not do a perfect impression of the old man? And these pogroms. I remember the people coming out saying, the hooligans are coming, the hooligans are coming. And they came in with their swords, And my father and my brother, my oldest brother, they grabbed those clubs and they went out swinging. Unfortunately, they came back. But a couple of others didn't. They were killed with the pogroms, and I lived through this. A couple of others were killed, he says. Think about how stupid it is. The movie is called Hollywoodism. I literally put the link in every single video I make. It's on YouTube. And it's the movie to watch. I just... Having been someone that's been in this arena for well over a decade now, 2 decades now almost, I know how difficult, I know the opposition. I know damn near everything anyone's ever going to say against me. I've heard it, and it's always this, like, literally, you guys have nothing. You'll say stupid things. Oh, that's just a move. Oh, well, who made? So I've done my best throughout time to figure out how I can make my presentation without giving you any of the any of the cowardly angles that you would normally jump to. You know, when people ask, where do I get my information from? And I say, well, I read the Israeli news. That really does eliminate, you know, you're thinking I'm going to say, you know, I saw a Facebook video or something like that, because you accept the legitimacy of Israeli news. That's the thing I'm then going to go use against you, because you're too dumb. I already know that your only thing is, oh, where'd you get that from? Because once you say that and then I tell you it's the Israeli news and you go, Hang on. Sorry about that. The thing is too, like again, like, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ignorant, because you're supposed to be. The smartest people in the world say the dumbest shit. You know, the smartest people in the world are like, well, I'm an astrophysicist and they're the Big Bang Theory. And you just go, oh, yeah, they're smart. They got the white coats on. They got the good jobs. And they say the Big Bang Theory. They probably have some sort of thing that allows them to know this.
Yeah, lots of years of school. So we just equate that to...
Lots of years of... But we don't think of school the right way. School is work, right? You have a job to do in order to get your paycheck. And your paycheck is your grades. Your grades dictate, you know, especially when you're in younger school, whether you get your freedoms, your TVs, or whatever, you know, you need to get your grades up. And it's just a you know, it's just programming you for the next stage in the fucking system. But it's, you know, people don't understand that Rockefeller thing where the Rockefeller guy said, you know, we don't want the poets, the laureates, the you know, the thinkers, we want the people to be, and we definitely don't want the doctors and the lawyers because we have all of those already. We want the people to be just smart enough to work our machines, but too dumb to realize they're slaves. And you know, I'm using hyperbole with that. It's something like that. I don't remember it exactly. But again, it's just like with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds in Hollywood. The Hollywoodism will tell you that they controlled Hollywood for 30 years. Then what? They just sold off the most profitable weapon ever created. They just, oh, well, we did a good job, but now let's sell it off to some goyim.
Oh, now we're allowed to have, you know, be doctors and judges and fuck Hollywood. Let's go get the jobs we weren't allowed to have before and control those industries.
I mean, think about this. Everybody made a big deal about Black Panther, was it 1 or 2? Because it was the first movie to have an all-black everything.
Yeah, the first one.
Right. That was what, 2015 or some shit?
Yeah, I remember being like, who the fuck cares? It's good. It's about time.
Right, but to think it took that long?
Right. And why are people having their pay? Who gives a fuck?
Well, and well, the thing is, it's like when they stop talking about the first of stuff, then you realize we're getting past it. Those kinds of things shouldn't matter, but they do in a way, because it's telling. It's not like, to me, again, it's not, oh wow, they were the first ones to do it, that's so great. It's who prevented that from happening up until then.
Right.
Like that's the scary part. That's
Like
the
the
part.
first movie where women were allowed to act in a, or before it was all men. All that shit. So it shouldn't have happened to begin with.
Well, and this notion that we have that, like, one of the things that they said in about, remember that the comparison between the J movie and the Black movie, and then they would say, ironically, these movies were shown in the J theaters to J audiences, and like
Right.
they would,
Right.
of course they were, because they did it. And then they would say, "Oh, look at what happened when the Jays took over and they started making." And the one movie was about uh, the white man who married the Negro woman, the Negress, and how he cut her finger and sucked on her blood, so now he has her blood in her body. And by Mississippi law, as anything as much as one drop of Negro blood in you makes you a Negro. And the Negress was a white chick. It was like, what are we? She didn't even have blackface on. She was just a white broad. And they were like, she's a black girl.
Just pretend.
It was fucking stupid.
Because we can't give that person the job.
Right.
What? Why?
Because Hollywood, the concept that Hollywood was racist. Well, Hollywood is not a person. Hollywood is an idea. It's like Israel. It's just a place. It's an invisible house.
I mean, initially Hollywood was that small group of people.
It was Hollywood land. When they did it, it was Hollywood land.
Right, but it was just that small group of Jewish immigrants that came from 500 miles of each other in the same part of Israel.
And no, 500 miles of each other within the same part of Europe, and there was no Israel back then.
Well, right.
So it was like Hungary. Two came from Hungary, one, but they were all within the 500 miles, and they were all super poor.
From the slums.
From the ghettos, and my grandmother, who raised 8 children in a 2-bedroom home above a grocer, she told my father, you got to get this, because the best thing about it is they pay for the goods before they get it.
That's part of that business.
Oh man, it's so eye-opening. It's so fucking eye-opening.
It was, yeah. And now I don't know what I'm going to feel like in the second half of it, but the first half, very creepy, icky, mad.
But it's crazy how, like, for me, it's affected everything. Like, like, understand that what Hollywoodism is saying is that what you see, what's presented to you, is carefully crafted J control to push their ideas, their beliefs, their narratives on people. And again, it's either I guess you just think it stopped, or...
Right. Yeah, because everybody took over, and now it's integrated.
Right, they finally got everywhere they wanted it to go, and then they went, okay, it's all good now, hands off. Right.
That's
just
not how that works.
No, it doesn't work that way. You don't build your corporation so you can abandon it.
Why would you create residual income and then say, I don't want that residual income?
Right. Generational wealth. Generational residual wealth income. Like, just... And then, but see,
keeps making itself.
There's so much yada yada there, where they talk about how, like, the first major Hollywood studio, the J just moved to Hollywood, to the orange groves of Hollywood, bought up all this fucking land, built this huge Hollywood, the first Hollywood studio city, they called it, and employed some 30,000 people. most of which were brought from back home.
If they came from the slums where they have the money to buy this, because they also weren't allowed to have any of the good jobs. So how did they have the money to do that?
No, because they weren't allowed in any of the good jobs. They went into other jobs. One guy invented the class for the Fox show school. Another guy got into diamonds, and another guy was into like pen sales or something. Like stupid shit. Just these stupid cover stories where like, you know, he couldn't quite remember what his real birthday was, so he made his birthday the 4th of July. You know, yeah. Or how like our whole concept of Christmas is what they wanted us to think. Did you know that White Christmas is a Jay song? It's somehow about Jay struggle and triumph. I thought White Christmas was about snow and shit. I was wrong. But everything you think about Christmas, the idea of the tree, the gifts under the tree, all that stuff, that was their propagation. So they could sell us a bunch of shit.
Make us buy a bunch.
Buy a bunch of shit, right? So they could sell it to us. Ways to keep the money from our hands and get us buying nonsense, and you know, people weren't celebrating Christmas like that. Christmas was a pagan holiday.
It's Yule. It's the winter solstice. It's not even on the 25th. It's the 21st or 22nd, depending on, you know, the year.
But the thing is, like, this is the part where it's so difficult, is that if you go look it up, you'll probably see some kind of conspiracy narrative that makes you go, holy shit. But you're not going to see the narrative that tells you it's a fucking J creation to sell us shit and control us. And that every aspect of how we view it was given to us through them showing it to us. You know, the America that existed before the television was in every home was a completely different America.
You know, it kind of makes you wonder how many of the old kings were actually Jay.
See, that's where you and I are different. You still think those old kings existed. I think how many of those old kings are just characters they gave us.
I think some are, but I do think kings
Well,
always been fucking greed power freaks that want to run the whole thing.
But that's because we think that like the castles and palaces and shit are like unique. We don't realize that before they did all these World War bombing campaigns, that everywhere looked like that. Those castles and shit didn't stand out because everybody had that shit. You know? So it's once you at least for me, I 100% do not I am 100% in this category, in this path right now. I don't believe anything else is real. There was a reset of some sort. An advanced version of us did exist here. Built all the buildings and underground tunnels and caverns and catacombs, and you know, these people were incredible. They were wiped out, and something and what is now the Jays is who inherited things, is who somehow survived or who were first uploaded into the system. Because again, I think we live in a fucking reality-based TV show, which explains the resets even better. That not the channel got changed, the people got boring. What's the backbone of all entertainment, folks? The backbone of all entertainment is conflict. Exactly. Not strife and struggle, conflict. Because like the Teletubbies, it's not strife and struggle, it's conflict. How do you get the round peg into the square hole? It's a conflict. You're trying to figure that out. all the way up to all this shit where the conflict of who gets killed and blah. This is what we want. Football. Well, my team win against your team. Conflict. That's, that's the struggle. That's to divide us and distract us. The bread and circus, no doubt. But if conflict is the base of all, like, if I ask you guys to give me a show that you watch that's not conflict, you watch the channel that is it's a constant sunny day, it's a meadow, there's butterfly and deer and shit that walk by, and there's never any death, there's never anything. It's just a pleasant, beautiful, no seasons change, nothing. It's the same fucking shit every day. You watch that? How many days you think you watch that? You'd look at that shit for 5 minutes and be like, all right, what else? What else is that? Give me some conflict. And so our show has to be conflict based. Which in itself makes me like, I hate even saying it, but that's how they keep us alive. If we do get to that utopian place again, which I think that's generations from now. It would take generations for us to get back to that place. But it's entirely possible that the people that had, like, we know what we consider like mansions and shit, those are like small houses. We don't know what they were capable of building. It's all been destroyed. What about that thing I showed you the other day, that big island rock castle thing? They were clearly capable of doing all kinds of insane things. So I think what they did was they got to that point where there was no conflict. They lived that unified, wonderful existence. There was no they couldn't, they'd overridden the interference. Or whatever it is. I can't sit here and claim to know anything. I can only speculate. But clearly something happened 17 something, 18, early 18 something. And it just wiped everything out. And whatever was re-uploaded into the situation was charged with cleanup, was charged with, with narrative creation and all that, but was given the technology to do so. And because of the job that they were given, they then inherited the narrative, and they now control it. And part of it is creating the conflict that keeps the show going. Anybody that thinks we don't live in a mud flood, there you go. Anybody that thinks we don't live in a fucking one world society, it's like, weren't you here a couple years ago? Didn't you see how that shit worked? Literal fucking bullshit, was shown to us, and we just all were okay. Trump decided that things were shut down. Funny how America, the United States was was the worst. The United States and Israel had the highest number of cases per capita. All these third world countries and shit, they weren't fucking ravaged by this. They weren't even touched by it. You didn't hear about the Mongolian crisis. You didn't hear about the Tikbakbasupasan or, some fucking Africa. You didn't hear about the Somali. You didn't hear about the crisis in Chad. You didn't hear about the Tibetan people getting, annihilated. You didn't hear about any of that shit. It was all just bullshit. I think one of the most fascinating things that I've seen is how Trump supporters remember Biden was who locked us down. Trump didn't do it. I don't understand how that works other than just total cognitive dissonance, and you just want to think that way. But it's pretty stupid. Like, you don't remember Trump talking about injecting bleach or light, some sort of light rays? Think about how fucking goofy these narratives are that we're given. And we're supposed to take this shit seriously. You know? And these are the people that tell you. I mean, isn't it strange that Tartaria isn't in your history? That it's sort of this thing where you talk about people like, oh yeah, Tartaria. Like, it's not on maps and shit. It was real. What are you?
It was like the first week or two he was in office that the lockdown stuff started, right?
No. You do this. You stay out of this. Okay, I can only defend you so much.
No, it was shortly after.
No, it wasn't.
I mean,
Trump was in office in 2016. COVID was the first official COVID case was December 1st, 2018 or 2019.
So Nathan was in a lot of trouble right before Christmas break. And we talked to the school about, okay, so when we get back, we'll sit down, we'll talk, you know, and figure out how to deal with it. And then they went back to school, but they weren't, and he was fine, but it seemed like they were only in school for like a week or two after they got back from break.
Yeah.
Before the lockdown happened.
Yeah. The first case was in China, December 1st, 2019.
So it was as Trump was leaving office.
Well,
Is that what happened?
yeah. I mean, it was not, no. I mean, he was in office for the full year. It was his last year. Well, that's the year the elections take place, and then he's in office until 2021. And people forget that shit.
Well, didn't he take office January 21st, 2020?
No.
No, he didn't.
It's not how that works.
No, it was
They get a full 4 years.
Yeah, it was 2021.
Right. It's like Trump's presidency, he won it in 2024, but he takes office in 2025.
Right.
Right? And that the elections will be in 2028, but he'll be president until 2029. Ever since I got my first shot, oh no, I'm now allergic to almost all foods. I have firsthand experience. Oh, dude, I am so sorry. I mean, I do have to tell you that is just your imagination. And it's obviously it's something else. Because it couldn't have been that. Couldn't have been that. Like, that's literally what the system tells you. When all the parents that say, I had this incredibly bright, you know, extremely advanced baby that was already almost talking and blah, blah, blah. They got it. When it went in them, they screamed bloody murder. I brought them home. They seemingly came down with like a fever and got sick and passed out way earlier than they normally do. They ended up sleeping a lot longer than they normally do. And when they woke up, they were gone. I could see that there was something inside their eyes, but all the progress just immediately stopped. And the government just says, well, all those parents are lying. They're mistaken. They're mismistaken. And it's so, it's like, it's just as insulting as the fact they did it to begin with, knowing that it was, you know, knowing that it's a possibility, knowing that it's all bullshit, knowing that it, you know, none of that shit that the guises that they use are real. It's repeatedly shown that kids that never get them grow up to be better off. Less ADHD bullshit, less allergies, less all these things. It's proven. Whenever you see people are in the hospital, it's not because they are, you know, if the news, you know, if they do have a story like that or they manufacture a story, that's one thing. But what you always end up hearing is that everybody that's being treated were people that got it. And that's fucked up. No wonder people are so scared. But to tell somebody, to tell this guy that it didn't happen to him, you were allergic to food beforehand. He's saying after he got the first one, he only got the first one, he's been allergic to all kinds of foods ever since.
Man. Well, you could do
He didn't have lines
detoxes.
to catch and beat his own cold sauce case and back to hell. Well, that was only a weekend, remember? He only had it for a weekend. And it happened to be the weekend he got his ass kicked in the debate and said, what am I supposed to do? Tell him to stand back and stand by? You know, where he got in a whole bunch of trouble, but then that was on a Wednesday. And then on Friday, he had COVID. And on Saturday, it was touch and go for a moment. And then on Sunday, somebody that kind of looked like him was seen driving around in the presidential limo, driving around the fucking hospital a few times. What? For what? Like, what? Can you imagine the Secret Service?
In there.
The Secret Service nightmare. No, he was driving around waving to the constituents. Because remember, there was people that had, like, formed support protests all around the hospital. But to think, like, he's supposedly sick with the worst thing ever. They're going to do the logistical nightmare it would be to have the fucking presidential limo drive around making, like, what? The limo doesn't go in circles like that because that makes it a target every single time it goes back around. It's a bigger target.
So, what I thought was very...
Wait. But then Monday he went back to work.
Yeah.
And it was because he had gotten a therapeutic that he didn't remember what it was called.
Yep.
And that Herman Cain didn't get a couple of weeks earlier, Harold Cain, whatever. But he didn't know if he knew he was immune to it. He didn't know if it was for a day, a week, a year, forever. But he's immune to it for right now. And that was the end of it. Also the end of the Proud Boys. Also the end of he only paid $500 taxes. Also the end of he got his ass kicked by Biden in that first debate. And hang on one more time. And when they asked the doctor, well, he was tested on Wednesday. How did he have it? How did he pop, for it on Friday, but didn't show on Wednesday? And they said, well, it was because he probably just didn't have any COVID in his nose or his mouth at the time. He had it, but it just wasn't in his nose or his mouth because that's how that works. So, sorry.
I have no idea what I was going to say.
I'm sorry. You've had many posts banned about them. Peanut butter, dairy, wheat, hazelnuts, and sesame seeds. I have done many detoxes. I only weigh 140 pounds. I'm 6 foot. Not much weight loss, lol. I've been trying to gain 2. That's fucking terrible.
Well, if you want, find me and message me, and I can show you a natural way to detox your system without, that's actually effective without causing any further damage. If you're interested.
Well, I gave you the link to the Facebook page. You can reach out through Facebook. So, are we saying, are there people on here that are going to be arrogant enough to say that this guy is lying? Or that he doesn't know what he's talking about? Or that he's not being accurate? What about kids that die or have lifelong issues because they don't get a shot? How do you know that's what it is? How do you know it's because they don't get a shot? So this is something we learned about yesterday. And something, again, it's like Tartaria. How is it I never heard of this? It's called miasm. M-I-A-S-M.
Miasma.
Miasma, sorry. M-I-A-S-M-A. Yes, miasma. Miasma. And it refers to the way that people knew we got sick for all of the time up until the 1880s. I think that's what we were connecting. The other video that we watched, I stopped and said, look at this, because it went back to the 1880s, I think. But in the 1880s, suddenly germs are invented. We went from believing that disease and all that came from the environment and from, a multitude of sources to believing that they are now these intelligent life forms. I mean, they sort of downplay the intelligence, but viruses and shit would have to be extremely intelligent to be able to survive going from your 98-degree body to resting on the 50-degree coffee table, waiting for however long for the next person to come by and brush that coffee table. So now they have the COVID, of course, starts self-replicating, and it they touch their face, they pick their nose. You know, we all pick our nose. Something, and when that happens, now it goes from their hand to their face, and then it goes up in their nose, and now they get sick. They could wash their hands, and the sauce will go down the thing. It's all invisible sauce. But it goes up their nose and gets them sick. Like, you guys all believe that shit. It must still have been in the crook of his elbow. The crowbow! It's the crowbow. Come on, didn't you guys watch Blossom?
No.
Biden was a puppet missing a string. Yep. Biden's the puppet, not Trump.
All the puppets.
I ate peanut butter all my life, and ever since 3 months after the thing, I kept having allergic reactions to stuff. I also can't eat corn either. So again, are you guys all saying that this just was a progression in his system? This is just how it works for some people. They go from loving and eating peanut butter their whole life to suddenly allergic to it, coincidentally, after getting a poke of who knows what the fuck's in it. I understand, though, you choose what you believe, but it's oddly specific to be random.
Not random.
I mean, yeah, it is. Correlation isn't causation, but no, it's an elimination of the options. You therefore go through and okay, so was I cut by something? No. I mean, as humans, huh?
It's the process of elimination.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. But as humans, we are like these really fucking amazingly adaptable creatures.
We're a biological system. It's
Eskimos have adapted to eating fucking blubber.
the one.
They don't eat vegetables or anything. They eat blubber.
The one tribe that lives on the water spends most of their lives underwater. You know,
they can hold their breath for like 3 minutes and
their
shit.
Pancreas and spleen have now naturally
adapted,
much larger than the average to adapt to that water life.
Right. They've adapted because we're adaptable. So to think that somehow a person can just suddenly for no, it just happens. It's not even it just happens that they suddenly become allergic to all of these things that are associated, everything he named off. Those are all things that seemingly are associated with
vaccine injury.
Exactly. I'm trying to figure out a way to say it without saying it. Oh. And because they have the VI fund, as long as you say that's but that's also those are the ingredients that if your kid has SOBA, symptoms of biological attack, or what fools argue over whether it's called autism. Autism is something you're born with. You don't
genetic.
You don't catch it. You can't just become autistic. You can have your brain damaged, and it can look like there can be similarities.
Like my cousin married somebody that has Asperger's, which is a form of autism. Guess what? One of their sons has Asperger's. It's genetic.
Maybe.
Autism is genetic.
Maybe.
But you are born with it.
There's something there, yeah. But you're not going to catch it. That's the point. You're just not going to catch it. You start that way. You don't become that. And like it's fucking nuts. Never getting another, and I'm glad I didn't get. I am too, man. I'm so sorry. But like that's what I was saying. It just so happens that the things that he's allergic to now are the things that if your child has this form of SOBA, that you eliminate them from the diet and the child improves. Jenny McCarthy has done amazing, amazing shit with her, research and
education.
money. She used her money in a positive way.
Yep.
Her money and her celebrity to get access to things that we didn't have access to.
And she's cool as fuck.
And she's proven that she, that her child has drastically improved by eliminating those exact things from his diet.
She came into the Townsend Hotel and I talked to her, and she asked me to sit down with her. Like, she's cool. She will talk to anybody about it. She's cool as fuck.
Did she say she liked
She's
me?
real. We gave her a podium.
No, but did she say she liked me?
She was a fan of your work.
But did she like
She
like
didn't see
me?
you.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But she heard about me though, and she probably liked me.
If she saw you, she would
She
have
probably
loved
liked
you.
me. She did see me.
Did she?
Yeah, I went to that thing, that presentation she was doing that one time. Whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, the point being that
She's done all the research and she's put it out there.
well, I think what one of their really great, the way that they've done it is they've tricked us, because they have people arguing over what it's called.
Right.
Does this person have autism or no? And the government flat tells you the truth. Just like they tell you the truth when they say around 1,100 people died in Israel. Right? Yeah. That's the truth. Around 1,100 people did die. Were they
Israeli?
No Israelis died.
Were they?
They were evil Palestinian militants. Chinese? Right?
Were they Mexican?
Because they tell you the truth. They tell you, and you just have to see multiple stories. They tell you the truth. Yeah, no. Actually, the truth is more like 1,500 people died in Israel that day. And those were the Palestinians. But they don't want to make it that obvious.
Right.
So they say, around 1,100 people died in Israel. That's the truth. That is the truth. It's around that.
And if you hear the words in Israel,
right,
your brain automatically thinks Israeli people.
It must be the Israeli people, right? And it's the same thing with this. The government flat tells you, no, it doesn't cause autism. No. We have this V injury fund. Yeah, we have this fund that if you say it was, if you word it correctly and you say that your child was injured,
and you get a doctor to agree with you and put that in their diagnoses.
Well, as long as you don't say the A word, then they won't. As soon as you say the A word, then they go, oh, your kid was born like that. Okay. You're saying we agree with you. It is. Your child is autistic, and autism is something you're born with, so have a nice day. Right.
Free of guilt.
Right. And so they have you tricked. They have this whole movement with vaxxed. I was so what you guys don't know is that a friend of mine at the time, Nikki Matner, happened to be friends with Brian Burroughs, who is the main director of Vaxxed. And so when we, at the time, Nikki and I were really good friends. She was in Australia, but we were really good friends. And this is before Nikki tanked her own feed by sharing my stuff. Nikki used to get 20,000 likes and comments and all that. Everything she posted, she was huge. Until she started posting my stuff. And then suddenly it dropped. And she couldn't figure out what was going on and blah, blah, blah. Well, she ended up connecting me with Brian Burroughs. And I had written a song called Vaxxed. And when we played it for Brian, he was like, oh man, this is really great. I wish I would have known we would put it in the soundtrack. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And him and I just sort of conversed for a little while after that. And he was like, you guys, we can have you guys on the soundtrack. Or talking about, and I asked if we could, maybe get a song in the soundtrack. And he was like, well, how about you do the whole soundtrack? And I was like, that would be amazing. So part two, I would reach out, but, things just sort of quieted down. I hadn't heard from him in a while. And then suddenly part two comes out. And I reached out and I'm like, oh man, what happened? And he's like, man, I feel so bad. We didn't end up using any actual music. We just used like background music the whole time. We didn't use any real songs. So, I'm really sorry. We didn't have that in the budget and in the time this time. And I was like, okay, well, is there any way you'd be okay if, because I think I had already written the two songs. Maybe hadn't recorded them yet, or maybe I had, but I was like, if we use some footage from your video to make like an official video, we make Vax 2, because I wrote Vax 2 Part 2, or Vax 2 Part 1 and Vax 2 Part 2. And I asked him if we could use footage and make like an official video, and he's like, you know what, I'll do you one up. How about you send me the song and I'll make the video for it? And I was like, that sounds amazing. So this was in late 2019. And this is either inspired by the first rumors or COVID. No, I think this is before COVID even. It was before COVID. Right. So if I would have released those songs at the time, we'd have looked like prophets. It would have looked like we were fucking, Nostradamus and shit. But for the next year plus, he would have an excuse. He'd be like, yeah, man, no, I really want to do this. I have I have a lot going on this week, but I'm going to get to it next week, I promise. And 2 weeks would go by, and I'd get back to him, and he'd be like, yeah, man, I'm so sorry. Things are they're so busy right now, and I keep wanting to get to it, but I'm going to get to it. And this went on for a year. Until December of that year, where he says, I'm really sorry. I promise I'm going to get to it after December. Here, why don't you go buy your kids a Christmas present on me? He sent me $150. And now if this is a troll, this is a very, very good troll whose PayPal account even said Brian Burrows. So for a troll to put that much effort in would be a lot. And the person wasn't, because again, I knew the association. I knew who I was talking to. And I had really held back because I had already once I saw Vax 2 and I saw how much Kennedy was involved, Bobby Kennedy was involved, Robert Kennedy was involved. Robert Kennedy. I was like, that's a Kennedy? I mean, I'm just saying,
Well, but the world, America, is in love with Kennedys.
Right, but like, that's because America's stupid and doesn't know shit. So the people that do know shit.
That's what I'm talking about.
But see, the people that do know, the people that are in that circle, like the people making a movie about these kinds of things, why would they be oblivious to it? And so I had kept my mouth sort of shut about that, but then after December and January went by again and still nothing, I was like, you know what? Fuck this guy. I'm so tired of this shit. Like, you fucked me. You made me wait. I could have looked a lot better when I put these songs out. I've been holding these songs for well over a year. And so I put the songs out, and I started freely talking about my disdain for the Kennedys and how this is when I started questioning things. Like, this is when it's like, Vaxxed is pretty popular at the end of the day. It's allowed to be popular, and now there's a Kennedy on board, and what they're doing in this movie is furthering it's autism. They're not Like, let's get past that. You know, understand that it doesn't need to be called this. Why does it need to be called this thing?
Well, supposedly Robert Kennedy is revamping the whole immunization process and guidelines and requirements, and he's going to clean all of them up and only make what's absolutely necessary required. So he's supposed to revamp that system along with our food.
Yeah, waiting on those food prices to drop.
No, not food prices, to clean up our food, to
Right.
get all the chemicals and the toxins.
I'm still waiting for the food prices to drop, though. Because it was Biden and Kamala that sat there like, what are we charging for broccoli now, missus? $5! Ah! Like, you guys are so stupid.
And you guys don't think that fucking Trump sending all these ICE agents to go scare all of these migrant workers off of farms and shit isn't going to raise our prices and also make our produce even more rotten by the time it gets to us. You're fucking crazy.
Let's see. So an astrophysicist was putting on airs a minute ago, but Jenny McCarthy, however cool she may be, I'm a fan of her early work in PB, does research, and is more of an authority in her respective topic. Well, what does she have to lose? She can't get blackballed from her community and not work again. Jenny McCarthy is a bazillionaire.
And you don't see her in a bunch of movies. She's not a fucking sellout either. She's still speaking her mind. She's still doing what's
Right,
best
she's
for her kid.
right. She's lost a lot of her fame. Well, no, she has that stupid show, The Masked Singer. She's on that. But still, she like so it's pretty simple, right? If you go to school and you get a very specialized, you're an astrophysicist, right? Basically, you sit around and do nothing all day, and you're considered a high-ranking member of society. You are brilliant. Everybody respects you. You get paid a lot of money to do your nothing all day.
You tell people I'm an astrophysicist, and they're like, "Oh, wow.
Oh, you must be super smart." And you're like, "Well, I am." And you probably are. You can probably regurgitate a whole bunch of shit.
That is meaningless.
However, let's say you figure out the same thing that so many doctors who have unalived themselves in the recent years figured out, things that go against the narrative, things that you know go against the health narrative or even the science narrative. You figure out, hey, that the earth isn't quite what they tell us it is, whatever. First, they're going to say to you, like, first of all, we're talking about the nerds. We're not talking about the jocks. We're not talking about the creatives. We're not talking about those people that stood up and you know, were these, you know, proud and overly, you know, boisterous people. We're talking about the people whose faces were in books and trying to hide and got beat up a lot. So they're already used to sort of being bullied. And they find out something they're not supposed to find out, or we're not supposed to find out. And they say to their colleagues, hey, I think I found something out here. And they go, yeah, we know. Just like all those other guys. Remember how, you know, Feldman or whoever it was before said, you know, he just disappeared or whatever. He unalived himself. Yeah, he found out the same thing. We just keep this quiet. And at the end of the day, you have a house, you know, $500,000 a year house. You have a wife that has a big SUV. You drive a new car. You have 2 kids in cars. Everybody has insurance. Everybody has cell phones. Everybody has programs. You have cable. You have all of these expenses that are all tied into you having this job. Your $100,000 a year plus job. And they're telling you, well, listen, you either shut the fuck up and keep enjoying this life that you have, or we blacklist you. And you won't get a job anywhere near astrophysics anything anywhere in the world. What are you going to do? Where are you going to take that astrophysicist degree to be like, okay, I need a job at the, as a give me your top salesman job so I can make this. Where are you going to go to get that same prestige, that same paycheck, that same do nothing job? That degree becomes useless. Now your family is out. Who's going to pay those bills?
They end up becoming professors.
Well, no, because if you get blacklisted, you're not going to become a professor.
At some bohunk college.
Maybe. You're going to lose that life.
A $50,000, $60,000 a year job.
Who's going to how many people are going to give up the J dream so that they can tell the truth and end up dead for it? I mean, when you look at all of the homeopathic and alternative medicine doctors that have unalived themselves, some of them, shooting themselves twice in the head and shit, like, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
It was like 60 or some shit. It was a lot. It was.
It's well over 100.
It was well over.
Yeah, it's well over 100.
By the time it was said and done. So I remember numbers in the 60s.
No, it's insane. But it's, you always get people that are like, don't you think if that was true, somebody would say something? Yeah, people do it all the time. And then either they get ridiculed, they get shamed, get shut down, or they get unalived. It's crazy. And you have to start seeing it for its honest truth. If I'm wrong about whatever I'm saying, then you should tell me, and I will honestly be like, oh shit, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't know it was like that. Like I was saying before, why would Tartaria be all over maps and in historical records, but not be something that you've learned about? How many of you understand the pneumatic tunnel systems that existed underneath major cities in the mid-1800s? Pneumatic tunnel systems like the bank, where you put the thing in the slit and it go around into the bank. That's a pneumatic tunnel. Those are all over the underground in major cities from the 1800s. Who the fuck built that? Right? There are people in the comments that are going to act like asking the narrative, who constructed the narrative, who built the foundation on which we live. Like that's a dumb question, or that's not a legitimate question or concern. How many of you, I know a lot of you might not even think about it, but once you do think about it, when you when you look at how they say they built pyramids and shit, this is just dumb. It's insulting. It's insulting that they tell us that all of these places all over the world didn't know each other, didn't communicate with each other, and yet they built the same architecture. Star forts are all over the place. There's a star fort off the coast of Florida that just don't make no sense. Let's deviate real quick. Yeah, such a bad thing to expose truth and question things like any curious person with crazy idea. Common sense ain't common, that's for sure. But it is, because what makes more sense, Matt? Do you honestly think they're these same people, you see them every day, here talking shit about anything other than what we're actually talking about, obsessed with me, hours on a time, mad because I'm doing that exact thing? Who's going to do that? Especially when we know who my target, enemy is. Who who do you think is going, like, what regular fucking American citizen is going to be like, oh, that guy that talks about we need to stop giving American tax dollars to Israel and we need to kill pedos, he's a bad guy. Who the fuck's going to say that? There's not a person out there that's going to do that. A real person. All right, so I'm gonna. They don't like me because I don't show my sources. Yeah, I see not more than 3 relevant comments per stream, and at least 2 of them make no logical sense. Right. That is, and then I've read you, Team Jorge. You can look into it even more. It's easy to figure out. Cal Hanan, and then to think that Team Jorge is just one. And it wasn't even disbanded. It was just exposed. How many other black ops operations, organizations, does Israel have that focus solely on cyber espionage and bot farm hacking? Team Jorge has 40,000 plus 30 to 40,000 bots at their disposal in 2022. How many do they have now? Facebook brags about taking out bot farms in Philippines that had, 500 some profiles, or in China that had 1,000 some profiles. And yet one Israeli black ops organization has at least 30,000, and you don't hear any talk about Facebook taking out any sort of Israeli bot farms. It just doesn't exist. Just like they discovered the listening devices stationed around the White House early in Trump's presidency. And they were traced back to Israel. It was found out they were Israeli listening devices that could intercept any incoming and outgoing call within the triangulated radius, which was totally around the White House. Meaning Israel had access to every communication going in and out of the White House for who knows how long, and nobody did anything about it. Time didn't exist back in the back. They didn't use a calendar. Everything was just put together in controllers. By the controllers, they forced the schools to teach us what they want us to know. Exactly. We have somebody that's using their brain here. That's exactly what it is. With the whole idea of keeping time, I just saw this thing about how in Paris in the 1880s, they created an underground pressurized air-powered clock system that ran all under Paris and out into the countryside and shit, where people could pay 30 cents a day in today's money to be connected to this clock system, that they would put a clock in their house that was connected through underground pipes to an air supply system that would keep time so everybody was on the same time. This was in the 1880s, and it was based on an earlier design from Austria, I believe. But 1870s or so. They just had pneumatic fucking clockworks that ran underneath the entire city, and they could just tap into it and, we just add a new clock system anytime we want to. That doesn't throw off the system. It's fucking insane. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Fort Jefferson, okay? Florida, Fort Jefferson, wiki. There you go. You guys cool? Fort Jefferson is a former U.S. military coastal fortress in the Dry Tortugas National Park of Florida. This thing. That thing. Yep. Built that, right? Look out in the water. Built all that shit out in the water. Basically curved and shaped the entire island. Off the Florida Keys, where the hurricanes hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. even though they don't talk about it.
Well, that's a perfect place to put it, right?
For sure. If you look up the history of hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes, you'd be surprised how little that history actually is. Let's see.
When I was a kid,
you're crazy, and you know
hurricanes
damn well
did
that
not
every
hit
other
Florida
adult
like they do now.
does that. As long as smoking is the louder they live, I can name 5 coworkers the same. So it's just a desperate attempt. It's stupid. Don't buy into that shit. Who cares what they have to say? They don't know. They're just desperate, grasping for straws. If I'm wrong about what I'm talking about the official narrative, so you should know better. President's Day is canceled until we get a real one. But the problem is we have a real president.
I know, but it's just funny.
The system, the idea of the president of the United States in itself is a broken, chosen narrative that is given to us. There's never been a good president. There's never been a free president. Obama was just as bad as fucking Trump. Obama signed the Monsanto Protection Act, which made Monsanto self-police. Nobody polices Monsanto but Monsanto. Monsanto is its own like its own country, basically. It's fucking weird. Anyway, it is the largest brick masonry structure in the Americas, covering 16 acres and made with over 16 million bricks. How did they get 16 million bricks to the Florida Keys?
The pigeons.
Pigeons. Yep. You always use the same fucking answer. Oh my god.
Because they were so useful.
They've been
That's
here.
why we have so many now that are out, because we employed so many, and then we fucking released them when we didn't need them anymore.
She makes sense. They've been here every single live for years. I can say I've personally witnessed now. It's beyond any basement loner antics. And it's beyond anything you see anywhere else. It is Team Jorge. Why would you think that people in their basements are just obsessed with me? Like obsessed. Every single live for hours at a time for years. Overthinking it's the system mad at the guy that's telling the truth. And somehow these basement trolls have the ability to affect my feed. They can shut the comments off. They can do all kinds of weird shit. Are you really gonna let yourself think that way? Oh, yep. All right. Among the United States forts, only Fort Monroe in Virginia and Fort Adams in Rhode Island are larger. The fort is located on Garden Key in the lower Florida Keys within the Dry Tortugas, 68 miles west of the island of Key West. The Dry Tortugas are a part of Monroe County. Yeah. So, 70 miles off. What, the farthest island? Is it the farthest island out? Here, let's look. Holy shit. So, hold the phone for a minute, please.
What phone?
This one. Yeah, hold it right here. So, okay, so where the fuck did it go? Okay, so this is the island that the fort is on, okay? So you pull out. It is not the southernmost. There's another island, a little tiny one, and then there's an island, okay? Still no land, still no land, still no land. Okay. It is this far away from the islands of Key West and shit. Like, think about that. Like, it's twice, it's as far away from the land. It's twice as far from the land as the end of the Keys themselves. Right? It's just this weird little island way off. Just to think that somebody discovered this island to begin with. What are the random chances of discovering that island? But we're to believe that not only did they randomly discover this island, and we'll find out when and how, but they also were able to build the largest brick structure in the United States that exists today. Obviously, it's not, wasn't always. It was supposedly built in 1847. In 1847, what technology allowed that to be built? Look, that's how big it is on the island. It's just right there. I mean, it's built in 1847. It's not built starting in 1847 until it's built start to finish in 1847. Had to be pretty hot. History, construction. In late December 1824 and early January 1825, about 5 years after Florida joined the United States, that's a weird thing to say. Florida joined the United States. U.S. Navy Commodore David Porter inspected the Dry Tortugas Islands. He was on the lookout for a site to build a naval station that would help suppress piracy in the Caribbean. Ha! Roll credits. Think about that shit, right? So he's just out there and about like, damn, I know we have all these keys, but there has to be more land out further. I'm going to go find a random island so we can build a fucking fort on it. Gotcha. He reported that they consisted of... wait. No. Unimpressed with what he saw, he notified the Secretary of the Navy that the Dry Tortugas were unfit for any kind of naval establishment. He reported that they consisted of small sand islands, a little above the surface of the ocean, had no fresh water, scarcely enough land to place a fortification, and in any case, were probably not solid enough to bear one. While Commodore Porter thought the Dry Tortugas were unfit for a naval station, others in the U.S. government thought the islands were a good location for a lighthouse to guide ships around the area's reefs and small islands. A small island called Bush Key, later called Garden Key, was selected as the site for the lighthouse, which became known as Garden Key Light. Construction began in 1825 and was completed in 1826. Oh, man. I just wish I knew who these people were back then, right? Like, they made Mexicans look bad. Maybe they were Mexicans. Maybe they were, like, super Mexicans. And they were just able to build, amazing shit. The 65-foot lighthouse was constructed of brick with a whitewashed exterior. A small white cottage for the lighthouse keeper was constructed beside the lighthouse. Can you imagine what it would be like to be this lonely fucking white lighthouse keeper out in the middle of the Florida Keys when a hurricane that you didn't know was coming came? That would just be unreal. And they were able to, because I would assume, like, it's strange to know the reality that it wasn't the case. Nowadays, there are multiple hurricanes per year. And I would imagine that island gets hit at least once or twice. But we'll find out that back then, for some reason, no hurricanes hit, or something. 1929, under recommendations from Commodore John Rogers, the survey ship Florida stopped at the Dry Tortugas to evaluate the anchorage. Contrary to Commodore Porter's experience, Josiah Tatnall III was delighted with what he found. The Dry Tortugas, he reported, consisted of 11 small keys and surrounding reefs and banks over which the sea broke. There was an outer and inner harbor. The former afforded a safe anchorage during all seasons, and was large enough to set a large number of ships ride to let a large number of ships ride at anchor. Okay. Of more importance, the inner harbor combined a sufficient depth of water for ships of a line with a narrow entrance of not more than 120 yards. Amazing to think how they were doing all of this surveying and shit in 1829. I wonder what pens and shit they were using, because like, you've been to that region of the world many times, and I know most of the time you were, top off, elbows on knees, but did you ever try to write something there? When you're in those superhuman conditions, though, writing from paper on with pen and paper is difficult, correct? Did you ever try it? No. See what I mean? Elbows on knees. But to think back in these days, back in these old days, they were able to with their feather pens and their ink wells. This guy is out surveying and taking his measurements with his, okay, well, this is, they're in the ocean taking measurements, figuring out the inner and outer harbor depth, and, I mean, it's just wild. It really is really is wild to think about it. Fuck. Anyway, I'm done. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day. I'm bored. I got shit to do. And pedophiles, you kill yourself. KK, bye.